Abortion leaves women scarred for life. This is considering an ethical thing, right? So if abortion left women happier versus pregnancy leaving you scarred, this is an ethical outcome, I imagine. Science tells us it's a human life. This is an ontological argument. Newborn is dependent on the parents, like a fetus. I think this kind of distinction is going to come down to ontology. Abortions cannot heal a rape. It's going to come down to ethics. All these language games, I think, are ontological. This potential being the same as a thing is going to be ontological. I just got here. Any fear that Lila will watch your planning? One, I don't think they normally do. But two, I don't care. I'm correct. I'm not worried. Why would I be worried? Coma, sleep, missing brain. These are ontological questions. Womb is designed for a baby. That's kind of a weird thing for ontology. This active versus natural capacity is going to be some kind of ontology thing. Science tells us when personhood begins is some kind of ontology thing. Okay. Should we read? People send me a lot of shit. Okay, before I flesh out her arguments, let's go through some of this shit. Okay, California Medicaid study. What is this? Deaths associated with pregnancy outcome. A record linkage study of low-income women. Okay, we have names of people. I don't know what the journal is. Oh, Southern Medical Journal, I see. Okay. I can't copy this? Hello? Okay. Deaths associated with pregnancy outcome. Reardon et al. Okay. 2002 study. Southern Medical Journal. I don't know anything about this journal. That doesn't mean anything though. Fuck. What's the impact factor? Is there... I don't even... Fuck. Where do you see this here? Hello? Okay, whatever. Somebody can look it up. Okay. All right. What, am I fucking retarded? Where the fuck is the full paper? I should be able to see it here, no? I am a human. I don't understand why this full paper is not available through PubMed, or there would be no way to access it. But is this ordinary? I feel like I've never seen, I didn't run into this for the COVID stuff. Okay, I don't know. All right. Okay. Deaths associated with pregnancy outcome, a record linkage study of low-income women. Abstract. Background. A national study in Finland showed significantly higher death rates associated with abortion than with childbirth. Our objective was to examine this association using an American population over a longer period. California Medicaid records for 173,279 women who had an induced abortion where a delivery in 1989 were linked to death certificates for 1989 to 1997. California Medicaid records for this many women who had an abortion in 1989 with death certificates for 89 to 97. Okay. Compared with women who delivered, those who aborted had a significantly higher age-adjusted risk of death from all causes, from suicide and from accidents, as well as a higher relative risk of death from natural causes, including the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, circulatory diseases, and cerebrovascular disease. Results are stratified by age and time. Conclusions: higher death rates associated with abortion persist over time and across socioeconomic boundaries. This may be explained by self-destructive tendencies, depression, and other unhealthy behaviors aggravated by the abortion experience. Okay. The reduction of maternal mortality rates is a major goal of national healthcare initiatives. The accuracy of maternal mortality figures has been questioned, however, because of inadequate reporting mechanisms and confusion about when a woman's pregnancy actually contributes to the cause of death. It is difficult, for example, to reliably determine whether pregnancy has contributed to death resulting from tumor, stroke, or suicide. To overcome the difficulties involved when using an a priori definition of pregnancy-related deaths, researchers at STAKES, the National Research and Development Center for Welfare and Health in Finland, undertook two important record linkage studies. They identified all death certificates from 1987 to 1994 for all women aged 15 to 49, linked them to Finland's centralized birth, abortion, and hospital discharge registers, and examined death rates relative to all pregnancy events among those women during the year before their deaths. I need this Finnish one, but we'll find that later. The STAKES studies revealed remarkable variations in death rates relative to pregnancy outcome. Women who had given birth had half the death rate of women who had not been pregnant in the year before death. Not been pregnant the year before death. By contrast, women who had had an induced abortion were 76% more likely to die than women who had not been pregnant, 102% more likely to die than women who miscarried, and 252% more likely to die than women who had carried to term. Compared with women who delivered, the age-adjusted odds ratio of dying during the year after an induced abortion was 1.6 for death from nonviolent causes, 4.2 for death from injuries related to accidents, 6.5 for suicide, and 14.0 for homicide. If the findings reported by STAKES identify a true association between mortality rates and previous pregnancy outcomes, one would expect them to be replicable elsewhere. In addition, okay, so the thing that we're looking for here, so this is like a raw numbers correlation. Now, obvious, in my mind, the obvious huge confound here is that pregnant women who carry to term are going to have a whole bunch of healthier things going for them. So this is a person who is able to get pregnant. This is a person who is able to sustain 9 months of pregnancy. This is a person who's able to deliver a baby at term. So like on average, these women are going to be far healthier than the average person. A person aborting can be aborting for a lot of different reasons that it could include health reasons, et cetera. So I would expect them to try to figure out a way to cleverly control for that in this paper. I imagine they'll go through that. So key points: low-income women in California have differential rates of deaths associated with childbirth and abortion that are similar to the pattern observed in Finland. Compared with women who give birth, those who had abortions were more likely to subsequently die of suicide, accidents, homicide, mental disease, and cerebrovascular disease. Previous psychiatric history does not appear to explain the higher relative death rates. The differential in subsequent death rates persists over a period of at least 8 years. Previous pregnancy outcomes may interact with the most recent pregnancy outcome to increase or decrease the relative risk of death. Okay. Okay, where were we? In addition, the STAKES findings raise the question of how long the effects of previous pregnancy outcomes on mortality rates may persist. The goals of our study were to investigate whether the STAKES findings would be observed in a homogeneous socioeconomic population and to examine any associations between pregnancy history and subsequent mortality over a longer period. Really? Oh, what is this? Why would they put the, just use another paper, okay? It's, okay, cause of death, all deaths. First pregnancy, delivery, number of deaths, rate per 100,000, first pregnancy abortion, age-adjusted relative risk, controlling for at least 1 year previous psychiatric history, delivery of first pregnancy and no abortions, abortion of first pregnancy, and age-adjusted relative risk. Okay. Okay, so number of deaths in the next 8 years is what we're looking at, right? So for the first pregnancy, if you delivered, then 585.5 out of 100,000 died, as compared to 730 if you have an abortion. Delivery of first pregnancy and no abortions. Wait, first pregnancy, okay, delivery of, oh, and this is controlling for at least 1 year of previous psychiatric history. Okay, so it doesn't seem to change this too much, maybe? Or rather, the risk would increase, I guess. The age-adjusted relative risk is 1.6 versus here it's 1.3. Okay, so it goes up a bit. Okay, all deaths, violent causes, and non-violent causes. Okay, it all goes up. Okay. All right. Jesus. Honk, honk, honk. You missed the rotate button, retard. Fuck. Fuck you. The stake's findings raise the question of how long the effects period. Cultivar study would investigate whether the stake's findings would be observed in a homogeneous socioeconomic population. Okay, materials and methods. The socioeconomic populations would not be the confound that I'd be the most interested here. The most interested confound, I think, here would be the health prior to being pregnant or whatever. That would be the most interesting confound. My guess is going to be that a healthy poor woman is probably going to have a better outcome related to birthing than an unhealthy wealthy woman, would be my guess. But materials and methods. California Department of Health Services identified 249,000 women who had received funding for either abortion or delivery in calendar year 1989 under the state-funded medical insurance program known as Medi-Cal. Of this population, 194,694 were citizens whose beneficiary identification codes could be recorded or could be record linked to valid Social Security numbers. A provision that eliminated illegal immigrants whose medical needs are irregularly covered by Medi-Cal. All short-paid claim records for these women were obtained for 6 fiscal years, beginning in July 1988 and extending through June 1994 with encrypted Social Security numbers provided for data linkage. In addition, these Social Security numbers linked to these patient IDs were also linked to DHS, to California death certificates from 89 to 98, resulting in the identification of 1,713 deaths. Okay, I'm just trying to think for stupid selection errors. The Social Security numbers linked to these patient IDs were also linked to DHS, by DHS, to California death certificates. We're not like missing people who move and die, right? Certainly they would have also been checking other death certificates, I would imagine, right? Or they're excluding people who move from the state, maybe? File containing cause of death, date of death, and the appropriate encrypted Social Security number for linking the two data sets is provided to our research team. An important limitation of our study is that we were not provided with any information regarding race, marital status, and parity. What does parity mean here? This information was either not readily available in government records or was omitted to protect the privacy and anonymity of individual patients. I feel like that's a really big, like there's potentially very interesting information in here. Like, for instance, let's say that of all the people that got abortions, let's say 90% of them were not married. And of the people who had like delivered fully, let's say like 70% of them were married. These are huge confounds, I feel, but okay. I'm going to put that in here. Why the fuck can I not copy from this PDF? The fuck? Is there a copy here? Open in reading mode. Is there digital rights management on the PDF? Okay. Thanks. Since data were collected from government records representing medical claims reported by thousands of healthcare providers, data integrity was carefully examined. The record linkage to the death certificate file was carried out by the state of California. Using the encrypted social security numbers, the linkage of multiple events for the same individual was done by us using the encrypted SSN. Linkage errors by SSNs are not uncommon. Therefore, we checked both our own linkages and those done by DHS to assure that a high-quality match had been carried out. The confirmatory variables available on both the Medi-Cal and death certificate files used in this checking included the woman's date of birth, date of pregnancy event, and the cost of medical treatment. Cat break. Okay. Screening for aberrant, indeterminate, and out-of-scope data resulted in the elimination of 21,415 cases, 419 deaths for the following reasons. Unlinkable social security numbers, the age recorded for an individual woman in the medical records and or the death certificates could not be reasonably verified. The abortion was identified as illegal or unknown. Reported age below 13 or above 49 at the time of their first pregnancy event. First delivery or induced abortion occurred after 1990. The cost associated with the target pregnancy event was below $100, suggesting only counseling for a possible procedure was received. Or 7, the first recorded pregnancy event was a miscarriage. Okay. The abortion. They eliminated 419 deaths, 21,000 cases. I mean, that's a lot of deaths, considering the low... Wait. Yeah, considering the absolute number of deaths here, that's a pretty low number of deaths. Or that's a pretty high number of deaths to exclude. Hopefully this is spread evenly amongst the data. Other categories, hopefully. Reported age below 13 or above 49. Fuck. Fuck. No, actually, fuck. I don't know how many this would have included. I don't like that. If I say abortion is more risky than having a pregnancy carried to term, but we're not going to talk about people who are below 13 and above 49, I would imagine that that's going to be data that would heavily skew towards abortion being healthier in both those cases. That'd be my guess. So if you're 12 years old and you're raped, or you have consensual sex with your 12-year-old boyfriend, and you get pregnant and you carry that to term, my guess is going to be carrying that to term is going to be a lot more risky than just having an abortion. And it's kind of weird that, it's not weird, I don't know if I'd say it's weird, but that sucks I feel like that's biasing the data set in one way. Okay. Just throw this down here. None of this necessarily makes the study or the data wrong. It's just always good to be aware of these limitations. Our primary analysis included all women in the sample who met the stated conditions. Since it has been postulated, however, that previous psychiatric problems may be a common risk factor for both abortion and shorter longevity, we also examined the subset of women who had their first known delivery after July 1st, 1989. This allowed us to control for at least 1 year before psychiatric history. All data handling steps were blind to the pregnancy outcome. Age-adjusted relative risks and about 95% confidence intervals were calculated by means of a logistic regression using age as a covariate. In the secondary analysis, the number of psychiatric claims within a year of the target pregnancy event was also used as a covariate. In addition, sensitivity analyses based on alternative matching rules revealed that stricter matching rules, for example, allowing no date of birth discrepancies over 6 years of medical claims, would still have produced similar results. Often, stricter rules would have resulted in even higher odds ratios and greater statistical significance, despite the loss of cases. The software used for all statistical calculations was SPSS 10.0. Okay. The first analysis compared death rates between women whose first pregnancy event was an abortion and women with no known history of abortion who had a delivery for the first pregnancy event. As seen in Table 1, deaths from all causes in the 8 years after the first known pregnancy outcome were significantly higher among women with a known history of abortion. Okay. In our second analysis, we explored the interaction of multiple and varied pregnancy outcomes on different cause-specific mortality. To do this, we used all of the reproductive history information available for the 6 years included in our data, this time all women, with a history of both abortion and miscarriage, and possibly childbirth as well, were excluded to avoid confusing the effects of voluntary and involuntary pregnancy loss. The remaining women were categorized into 5 groups by experience with each pregnancy outcome. So they were eliminated 48 deaths with a history of both abortion and miscarriage. This time, all women with a history of both abortion and miscarriage were excluded to avoid confusing the effects of voluntary and involuntary. Okay, geez. Okay, I feel like it's biasing it even more then, right? You're getting rid of anybody that had a miscarriage as well. So only women that are healthy birthers are being included. Okay, let me see if we can find this table. I'm talking about Table 2. Detailed cause-specific deaths and death rates in 8 subsequent years for women with a history of at least 1 abortion, compared with women having no known history of abortion. Delivery only, abortion followed by delivery, delivery followed by abortion, delivery followed by miscarriage. Oh wait, they don't eliminate it, they just put it in different things. The remaining women were categorized into 5 groups who experienced pregnancy outcome. Women who had only abortion outcomes were more likely to die. Overall, women in each, wait. Second analysis, but to do this, we used all the reproductive, this time all women with a history of both abortion and miscarriage, and possibly childbirth as well, were excluded. Okay. With both abortion and miscarriage were excluded. Okay. So per 1,000 or per 100K deaths, if your all-cause mortality or all deaths, if you deliver, is about 550 per 100,000. it's 854 per 100,000 if you have an abortion. If you have an abortion first and then deliver, then it's 462. Delivery followed by an abortion, then it's 514. And delivery followed by miscarriage, then it's 612. Interesting. Abortion followed by delivery. I should have made a prediction before going through each thing. Does this make sense? So if you deliver healthily, you're at 550. If you have an abortion, then you're at 853. Higher is worse. If you have an abortion and then you have a healthy delivery, you're at 462. If you deliver and then have an abortion, you're at 514. And then if you deliver and then miscarry, you're at 612. Sanity-wise, it seems to check out. So like if you're healthy enough to deliver, then you have the best outcome. If you're healthy enough to have had an abortion and then you deliver, you're at 462. And then if you are healthy enough to deliver, but eventually you have to have an abortion, you're at 514. These seem to follow along the health axis a lot. Hopefully, man, this is like, we need some more investigation. However, hidden in this data, there's like a really weird story that you could tell here that's very counter intuitive to her analysis, which is, no, it's not. Actually, that's not true. No, it is true, actually. If you were going to, if you were reading this table and you just wanted to maximize your outcomes by what you think this is a causally linked table, and you were going to deliver a baby, and you have 500, like if you just deliver, the chances of you dying in the next 8 years is better than if you have an abortion. But if you have an abortion and then you get pregnant and deliver another baby later, your healthcare outcome is actually better than the people who just deliver. I feel like you could argue for the common thing of, well, I wasn't ready to have a baby yet, so I had an abortion, and then that would be an interesting table 2 analysis. According to table 2, the best surviving group of women were in column 3, who had an abortion followed by a successful delivery, followed by women who had a delivery next was by women a delivery followed by an abortion, and then finally women who only delivered with no abortion. I don't think she would like that reading from this, but I mean, this is kind of true, or not kind of true. It would be if we're treating this as causal, that would be true. Oh, they're also like very, very low. They're super low on the suicide table as well. They're the lowest of all 5 groups. If you have an abortion and then have a baby later on, they're much healthier than all the other groups, it seems, as well, because their nonviolent causes are lower. Okay. The remaining women were categorized into 5 groups by experience with each pregnancy outcome. Women who had only abortion outcomes were more likely to die overall than women in each of the other 4 groups. Only in comparison to women who had a miscarriage after a birth was this finding not statistically significant, which seems to track because people that miscarry after having a live birth are probably experiencing other health-related things. Stratification by cause of death revealed that the abortion-only group had the highest death rate of all 5 groups for both natural and violent causes. The greatest number of significant differences occurred between the abortion-only and delivery-only groups. Women in the 3 groups having both delivery and... It's interesting that they point this out. They don't point out the interesting... I feel like this abortion followed by delivery gives us some really unintuitive answers if we think that abortion is really bad for you. This column 3, I think, is a little bit hard to deal with in our analysis, but I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see what they say about this. Stratification by cause of death revealed that the abortion-only group had the highest death rate of all 5 groups for both natural and violent causes. The greatest number of significant differences occurred between the abortion-only and delivery-only groups. Women in the 3 groups having both delivery and pregnancy loss, abortion or miscarriage, had lower death rates than the abortion-only group for nearly every cause of death. Women in the 3 groups having both delivery and pregnancy loss, abortion or miscarriage, okay, lower deaths rates for these 3 groups, however, would be expected since women in these groups must necessarily have lived long enough to have 2 or more pregnancies. They really do hide the... They don't talk about that at all. Either my analysis is very off or they're very biased in what they're choosing to highlight from this, but okay. Single known pregnancy events. For our third analysis, we limited our comparison to the 2 most disparate groups, births only and abortions only. To further control for the confounding factor of multiple pregnancy outcomes, this analysis included women with only 1 known pregnancy event. The mean age was 26.39 for women who delivered and 25.96 for women who aborted. During the 8-year period after the first pregnancy event, women who aborted were 62% more likely to die all cause than women who carried to term. They were also significantly more likely to die of nonviolent causes, suicide, and accidents. The greatest number of deaths were due to nonviolent causes, therefore, these were disaggregated. Examination of major categories of death from nonviolent causes revealed that the most significant differences were in relation to deaths from AIDS and from circulatory diseases. Okay, this is table 3 that we're going to be looking at. Okay. Again, they must address this at the end. Is this from the 1997 study from Finland? Medical abortion didn't become available there until 2000. Before then, there was surgical abortion. No, this is the California Medicaid study analysis, I guess. But the big confound they were trying to control for here is like socioeconomic stuff or whatever. But I feel like that's not the relevant one. I feel like it's health of the mother. They have a psychiatric condition thing here, but I don't think psychiatric condition would be the most important thing, you know? South Korea is a more recent one. Yeah, I'll look at these others later. Okay, so number of deaths. 1 delivery only, 1 abortion only. Okay, so it's 614.7. That's the rate per 100,000 versus 974.6 if you have an abortion. The violent causes, suicide is over 2 times higher. They die less from accidents or from being murdered. No, I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. I was looking at the absolute, not the relative. They are murdered more and they die more in accidents. And then nonviolent causes, they die more as well. Over 2 times as much from AIDS. I don't know what mental disease means that you could die from. Circulatory diseases is significantly higher, almost 3 times higher. Cerebrovascular disease is like 8 times higher. Other heart diseases over 2 times higher. The issue that I'm having is like these things here could all be reasons why you have an abortion. And so if you're having abortions because of reasons like these, then it's not really so much that the delivery and the abortion things are the causal things. It's that there's a common root that would cause you to die and cause you to have an abortion. It's not the abortion itself, right? They might. We'll look at other studies. Okay. As shown in Table 4, stratification by 2-year increments revealed significant differences in the death rates during the first 2 years for overall deaths, deaths due to nonviolent causes, and deaths due to violent causes. Other significant differences were found in all but the 5th and 6th years. I feel like you would expect if you're having an abortion versus delivery, I would expect the greatest difference to be in the earlier years, and then the differences would maybe fade a little bit as the time goes on, maybe? So that would be my... But maybe not, I don't know. We'll look at nonviolent causes. So from 1 to 2 years, it's from 82.6 to 135. Or we just look at the age-adjusted relative risk. It does seem to be the highest in the 1 to 2 years after. 3 to 4 years, it significantly drops. Goes up a bit from 5 to 6, and then down again from 7 to 8. Okay. If you control for 1 year previous psychiatric history, controlling doesn't seem to have a huge impact, I guess. Okay. Stratification by age is shown in Table 5. Let's look at Table 5. Age at first known pregnancy, 13 to 19. That's a crazy age group, no? Isn't that kind of a crazy age group? I feel like there's a significantly different profile of like a 13, like I would break this up like 13 to 16 maybe, or like 13 to 14, 15 to 16, and then maybe 17 plus or 18 plus. 13 to 19 is a crazy age category. And it looks like it's their largest one. Oh no, 40 to 49 is the largest one. That's the second largest one. Jesus. Wait. We can listen to music while we do this. Okay. So if you delivered a baby past in the 40 to 49 category, an abortion is significantly healthier for you. In the 35 to 39 category, the abortion is much worse for you. I shouldn't say that actually. The people that get abortions are much more likely to die. One abortion only. Okay, it's worse in every other age category. Okay. Fuck, 13 to 19 is such a crazy age stratification. Okay, whatever. It's teen moms? It's teens? I understand it's teens, you fucking retarded piece of shit. I'm just saying that getting pregnant at 13 is probably going to produce significantly different outcomes than getting pregnant at 19. Or 14 is going to be way different than 19. That's a really... Like, how old is your girlfriend? I don't know. She's like 19 to 13, somewhere in that age range. Like, this is a very... That's just a crazy grouping of age. That's especially for health-related stuff related to pregnancy. I wonder how many abortion deaths are related to some kind of health emergency that require an abortion. I don't know if it covered that. It doesn't, and I feel like that's your most important confound. I don't think it goes over any health-related stuff, which I think is really, really, really weird. But... differences were significant for 4 of the 6 age groups. As would be expected, the risk of death from non-violent causes increases with age, while the risk of death from violent causes generally decline. Previous psychiatric claims. Our fourth analysis was that of women who had their first pregnancy event between July 1st to December 31st, 1989. By limiting the analysis of these 6 months, we were able to examine any inpatient and outpatient psychiatric claims when had 1 year before the target pregnancy events. The resulting sample consisted of 17,472 women whose first pregnancy event was abortion, and 41,956 women who had delivery as their first pregnancy event with no history of abortion. Among these women, a number of previous psychiatric claims were significantly correlated with overall deaths, deaths by violent cases, and deaths by non-violent cases. Which table is this? Is this still table 5, or is this... Yeah, oh yeah. Wait. Yeah, it is. Okay. Logistic regression analyses were done using a number of psychiatric claims within 1 year before the target pregnancy event and age as covariates of results. These analyses are given in tables 3, 4, and 5 in several circumstances, most notably deaths related to mental illness. The relative risk of death for aborting women compared with that of delivering women increased after removing the effects of previous psychiatric history. Discussion. The death rate from all causes was significantly higher for women with a history of abortion than for delivering women with no known history of abortion. Table 1. Comparisons across the 5 possible combinations of pregnancy experiences analyzed here. Comparisons across suggest that childbirth without any pregnancy losses, abortion or, this is for table 2, abortion or miscarriage may have a protective effect, while abortion without any childbirth experiences may have a deleterious effect. These effects over the course of a combination of pregnancy outcomes may also interact. The most pronounced, they don't bring that up at all. I don't trust these, I don't trust these researchers. I'm curious who these people are. Are these like anti-abortion advocates or the researchers? Because this is the most surprising thing that stands out to me is that in table 2, our best chances of survival as a woman in almost every single category, it seems, is to have an abortion and then later on have a baby. And that, I feel like that's never, ever, ever addressed in any part of their discussion. But I don't know, we've got a couple more pages, I guess. Maybe they'll bring this up, I'm not sure. The key findings that the elevated death rates associated with women who had abortions were observed throughout the 8 years examined. The most pronounced difference in relative risk of deaths by various causes were found between women with a history of only 1 known pregnancy compared to the key finding is that the elevated death rates associated with women who had abortions were observed throughout the 8 years examined. This indicates that the association between abortion and higher subsequent mortality rates previously observed in Finland is a persistent one. Higher death rates after abortion may be explained by a number of factors. Okay. Women who have children may be more likely to avoid risk-taking and take better care of their health. Alternatively, a history of abortion may be a marker for other stress factors that decrease longevity, or the higher death rate among aborting women may stem from increased psychologic stresses related to unresolved guilt, grief, or depression. This hypothesis is supported by another analysis of the same population in which it was found that even after controlling for previous psychiatric treatment, women who had abortions across all age groups had significantly higher rates of subsequent psychiatric admissions. These people know that babies don't come out of your brain, right? They come out of your body. There has to be, it's going to be in the next page, there has to be a discussion of the actual physical health of the woman. That has to be the case. That's an insane thing to just assume. Like, alternatively, a history of abortion may be a marker for other stress factors that decrease longevity, or the higher death rate among aborting women may stem from increased psychological stresses related to unresolved guilt, grief, or depression. Okay. An abortion mortality has significantly higher rates of subsequent psychiatric admissions. The highest relative risks were related to adjustment reactions, bipolar disorder, and depressive psychoses. The findings of this study are consistent with a substantial body of literature demonstrating an association between abortion and suicide. But what happened here? Okay, so like we can look at suicidality, right? So are abortions followed by delivery. So if you have an abortion and then later on you have a baby, right? Your rate of suicidality is 16.3 per 100,000. Now that's 4 times lower than the abortion people, but it's almost half of it's quite a bit less than the suicide people, or not the suicide people, I'm sorry, than the delivery only people. So if we're looking at things like suicidality, your best bet is to have an abortion, apparently if you're not ready, and then have a delivery later on. I'm reading a little bit of that I don't know why the abortion would happen, but you could also argue that people having an abortion and then have a delivery later, though, are healthy enough to follow two different, are healthy enough to follow through with 2 different pregnancy events. So you could argue that biases this group towards higher survivability. But you would have to tease apart this data doing some kind of analysis on health, because this is an outlier. This is a big outlier, and it is going against your assumption here. You have to explain that. How is it that aborting a baby first and then having a delivery is such a huge... Because your most survived group here, your best performing group here, are people who had an abortion and then delivered a baby. Now, you could argue that, well, that's because they are a multi-pregnancy group and the delivery only and the abortion only group aren't. Okay, fine. But you also have people who delivered one baby and then had an abortion after. Those people also die less than people who just delivered. So... Or no, wait, that still plays into what I said before in that they have it's still multi-pregnancy events for both of these. But I don't know how they don't deal with these at all. Delivery followed by an abortion, yeah. If the abortion is some causative factor of killing yourself. Okay. Maybe they'll go into this. The findings of the study are consistent with a substantial body of literature demonstrating an association between abortion and suicide. This is also not... I don't believe that this is an appropriate study for teasing out suicidality here. I believe that you should be doing a much deeper analysis of the psychiatric conditions that we're talking about, especially because your suicide numbers here in absolute values are very, very, very low. If we look at so table 2 here that's talking about suicide here, what is our N equals here? I think we're dealing with a little bit over maybe 150,000 people altogether, right? The number of suicides in our delivery only group is 21 suicides. For the abortion group, it's 20. For abortions followed by delivery, it's 3. That's 3 suicides. Remember, because of the selection that we've made with some of our data before, for instance, they screened out any pregnancies that were below the age of 13 and above the age of 49, which screened out about 21,415 cases or 419 deaths. That could significantly modify some of our data here. So for instance, I would get, there's a guess I'm making, but I can't tell because the researchers didn't include it. My guess would be people who have an abortion or a delivery under the age of 13 are probably much more likely to commit suicide. My guess would be the people that delivered might even be more likely, or to have health problems, but that's not going to show up in any of our data here. And that's a significant number of deaths. 419 deaths, right? All the deaths in the delivery group are 464. I really don't like this analysis. It feels very crude to me and very motivated. But okay. A record-based measurement of suicide attempts before and after abortion, has shown that an increase in suicide rates among aborting women is not related to previous suicidal behavior, but is most likely related to adverse reactions to the procedure. Pregnancy and childbirth, on the other hand, reduce the risk of suicide. A record-based measurement of suicide attempts before and after abortion has shown that this is referencing a different study. That's also kind of a big claim. The greater risk of fatal accidents and homicides may result from unrecognized suicides. What? Or increased risk-taking behavior. Deaths from accidents may also be related to higher rates of alcohol consumption or drug abuse among aborting women. Did you measure any of this? Excuse me, alcohol consumption or drug abuse, substance use disorder, was that not a thing? When was substance use disorder added to the DSM? Was that not in the DSM-4? I don't know when the 5 was published. The higher risk of death from homicide may reflect increased levels of anger, self-destructive behavior, or domestic violence after abortion. I think that was added in Table 5. Substance use disorder? Did they add particular mental illnesses? Not really, I don't think so. Just any psychiatric events at all. Meaning, did they check in anywhere or do anything? What the fuck does that even mean? How do they know all of this? It's conjecture. Now, conjecture at the end of a study is fine. You expect them to think about well, what could be causing this? But there's a couple issues. One is in good research, when they have conjectures on we think that this could be a big thing, well, if they have the data, then they'll do that analysis, right? We think that this could be a really obvious confound, so we're gonna, in Table 6 or in this, we've actually broken these apart and disaggregated it and looked at the thing to see if it could be, number one. Or number two, they'll say this is an area for further research, or maybe they'll borrow from other research depending on what they're looking at. But when all of their guesses are pointing in the same direction, they're guessing that but having an abortion is causatively bad for you, their data absolutely does not support that. They're not even approaching a responsible analysis. They would need to tease apart these psychiatric conditions or the types of women that have abortion. There's so much more information that we would need to look at here. Because again, the obvious confound here is health of the woman's body, and that's not addressed at all. There's no addressing whatsoever. And I would argue that the reason why I think your Table 3, your 2 highest survival groups are your abortion followed by delivery, and your delivery followed by abortion. So women that were healthy enough, or at least lived long enough to survive 2 pregnancy events, these are your 2 healthiest groups. Both of these groups involve an abortion, and both of them outperform the delivery-only group, right? So you've obviously got some kind of health confound here. How can you not address this at all? The only health they're dealing with is mental health, which they very weakly kind of tried to stratify here. I don't even know. No, you wouldn't even call it stratification. They're just having well, if you checked in for any psychiatric thing at all for 1 year, Okay, hold on. Sorry, okay, let me keep reading. In regard The heightened risk of death from nonviolent causes may reflect a decline in general health after abortion, as reported elsewhere. Other unhealthy behaviors linked to abortion are increased alcohol consumption, drug abuse, and smoking. In regard to the unexpected finding of increased deaths related to cardiovascular disease, a substantial body of research has shown that psychological problems, especially depression, increase cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. What would you cause like a double causative effect? There's a body of research. So if you have an abortion, the abortion will make you depressed, and then the depression will cause an increase in negative cardiovascular events. What the fuck? Compared with delivering women, women who abort have significantly higher rates of depression, an average of 10 years after their first pregnancy event, even after controlling for a previous psychologic state. It is possible that persistent emotional reactions to abortion may aggravate or cause cardiovascular illnesses. Additional investigation of this association is warranted. Jesus. Unfortunately, as in the case with the Finland study of pregnancy-associated deaths, this data set did not include any information on race, marital status, or parity. I don't know what parity means here, all of which may be significant variables. This limitation is partially offset by the fact that these data represent a homogeneous socioeconomic population. Why would that? I don't agree with that. The fact that it includes only low-income women who would generally face similar stressful life events would tend to help control for socioeconomic factors. Why would you control for socioeconomic factors here instead of controlling for health factors? That's so weird. By comparison, the Finland studies, which included a heterogeneous national population without controls for socioeconomic factors, also revealed a trend towards substantially higher death rates for abortion. The fact that these large perspective, record-based studies using different types of populations, a heterogeneous population of Finns and a racially diverse population of local Americans, found such similar results indicates that the trend in higher death rates among aborting women is likely to hold across racial, economic, and national boundaries. In addition, comparison to these results with national data suggests that these findings are likely to hold true across race, marital status, and parity. The 1997 suicide rate per 100,000 American women aged 15 to 24 for all races was 3.5 to 3.7 for whites and 2.4 for blacks. Ages 25 to 44, the suicide rate 6.0 for all races. In our sample, the average annual suicide rate for women with a history of delivery was only 3.0, while it was 7.8 for women with a history of abortion. Our findings bracket the national averages regardless of race. There's a strong protective effect related to childbirth and a strong detrimental effect related. That's insane. That's a crazy bullshit extrapolation from this. That's wild. Our finding that pregnancy events may affect mortality over several years and may counterbalance. Like, your data suggests the opposite. Suggests a strong protective effect related to childbirth and a strong detrimental effect related to abortion. Your two highest survival groups had abortions. Sorry, okay. Maybe conversely, however, unknown abortion events would tend to inflate the association between death and the delivery. Hold on, where were we? Our finding that pregnancy events may affect mortality over several years and may counterbalance each other when childbirth and pregnancy loss are both experienced underscores another limitation about this study and the stakes studies. Incomplete obstetric histories. I'm guessing that means like your womb health. It appears most likely that more complete data could have revealed an even greater disparity between abortion only and delivery only. This is likely since unknown childbirth events would have. We have no idea, but we think it's actually likely with no data. This is likely since unknown childbirth events would have a protective effect on women otherwise identified as being the abortion only group. Protective effect on women. Conversely, however, unknown abortion events would tend to inflate the association between death and the delivery-only group. Maybe the diluting effect of unknown previous pregnancies is seen in the age stratification results shown in Table 5. The level of significance generally appears to drop with increasing age. Indeed, in the oldest age group, 40 to 49, not only is all statistical significance lost, but also the relative rate of death suddenly appears to shift in favor of those who had an abortion. However, it is certainly true that the oldest age groups of women will proportionally have far more pregnancy events that are unknown to us than the younger women, for whom the 6-year dataset captures a major portion of their reproductive years. Our classification of women as abortion only or delivery only would therefore be increasingly inaccurate with increasing age. The use of datasets that include complete reproductive histories would eliminate this problem. Finally, at the request of the California DPH, this population was limited to only those women who had a Medi-Cal-funded abortion or hospital delivery in 1989. This made it impossible for us to compare these women to a group of Medi-Cal eligible women without any pregnancy history, or to a group of women who had miscarriages in 1989. In future research, comparisons with both nulliparous women and women who miscarry would be valuable. Okay. Jesus. The Elliott Institute is the lead researcher. David C. Reardon. Is an American electrical engineer, an anti-abortion activist. Does he not have any... Is this the right guy? He's the founder of the Elliott Institute, an anti-abortion advocacy group, and the author of a number of articles and books on abortion and mental health. When did he found that group? Hold on. Isn't the conflict of interest section normally found at the bottom of a study? Also, this is a lot of references. I guess it's not always uncommon, but... Okay. Especially for such a weak... even calling this like a study is... Yeah, whatever. Wait, where the fuck did I just put this guy's wiki? A graduate of the University of Illinois Department of Electrical Engineering, Reardon began researching the effects of abortion in the mid-1980s. Oh, he got a PhD later on in biomedical ethics from Pacific Western University, an unaccredited correspondence school. Oh, what the fuck does that mean? Wait, what the fuck? Pacific Western University was an unaccredited university that closed in May of 2006 following a lawsuit filed by the state of Hawaii. Oh, this is all good. It's all good to know. What do they close for? Mm-hmm. In 2005, the State of Hawaii Office of Consumer Protection brought a lawsuit against the institution alleging that it enrolled fewer than 25 in-state residents. This is like just like an online college you get a PhD from? What? These are... Can I get one of these? And use several websites, including www.apiu.ws, www.open-universities.com, warwicks.com, to enroll distance education students from other places. On May 9th, 2006, the state court received a default judgment in favor of the state agency, ordering them to cease operation and assess a civil penalty of $500K. Pacific Western University and the affiliated Pacific Western University, Louisiana, were not accredited by an accrediting body. As such, the school's decree... Okay. Unaccredited. No, it would be not accredited. A not accredited? No, it would be unaccredited. Interesting. Raridan describes his position on abortion as both wait. How much you want to bet that this guy has talked to Leela? Do you think? With Gregory Pine? Fuck, maybe not. Oh, I wonder if this guy's dead, actually. I have no idea. Lucky. Oh, no, wait. It would say up here. What does he have his birthday? What? Is he even real? Destiny, click. Oh, nice. Let's see. As an example, okay, Chris Mooney profiled Raridan as an example of what he describes as a Christian conservative Christian conservatives who have gone a long way towards creating their own scientific counter-establishment. He notes that Raridan's findings conflict with those of the APA, American Psychology Association, which in identity rejected the notion that abortion regularly causes severe or clinical mental problems, blah, 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 front page, you know. Page 19, empty state. Yeah, I'll look at response studies, but just reading this, I'm confident enough that this is a dog shit. It's studies. Hold on, let me be clear. Let me be super clear about all of this, okay? There's nothing inherently wrong with what they've done here. The bad part is what the conclusions they're drawing from, and the discussion part is severely lacking in terms of consideration for other types of very obvious confounds when it comes to being healthy after a pregnancy. And the fact that I don't even see it a single time considered the health of the mother, and that it is over and over again doing this very weird addressing of like suicidality coming from all these weird mental health problems, but then they don't even like tease apart why did they go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist is very, very, very strange. Like there's enough here to just, without even looking at a response study, it seems to not be dealing with the subject matter in a very honest way at all. And the discussion section is sorely lacking. Also, I haven't read. I'm sure there are other people who've read way more research than I, but for such a light 9-page, 8-page, really 7-page, really study, 47 citations. That's a lot of references for such a dog shit paper. But I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Okay. LA Institute has endorsed model legislation regarding informed consent. Reardon David C. Aborted women, silent no more. Jesus. The Southern Medical Journal, that's what this was published in, right? 2024 impact factor is 0.8. Yikes. I'm pretty sure 10 is the best, and I think anything like 3 or 4 and above is considered decent. 0.8. God damn. Southern Medical Journal is what it was. Okay. That's a study. People said their responses to this. I don't know. I'll probably just try to find one, I guess. But yeah. What do we have here? No, bro, 107 pages. The fuck is this? This perspective argues that abortion is traumatic because it involves a human death experience, specifically the intentional destruction of one's unborn child and the witnessing of a violent death, as well as a violation of parental instinct and responsibility, the severing of maternal attachments to the unborn child, and an unacknowledged grief. From Coleman, Reardon. Okay, well, the view of abortion is inherently traumatic, as illustrated by the statement that once a young woman is pregnant, it's a choice between having a baby or having a traumatic experience. The belief that women who terminate a pregnancy typically will feel grief, guilt, remorse, loss, and depression also is evident in early studies of the psychological implications of abortion, many of which were influenced by psychoanalytic theory and based on clinical case studies of patients presenting to psychiatrists for psychological problem after an abortion. Is this just going through all the different conceptual frameworks? Okay. Okay, this seems like an interesting thing, but I don't think I'm gonna read this whole thing. Jesus. Okay, don't commit this. What is this? Wait, I wonder if I should keep this. Report on the APA Task Force on Mental Health and Abortion. This might be good to just have. Let's throw this down here, just in case. We'd be rewatching your past convo with Leela on stream. Maybe. We'll see. Because of a lapse in government funding, the information on this website may not be up to date. Good one, Republican dipshits. Does the outcome of a first pregnancy predict depression, suicidal ideation, or lower self-esteem? Data from the National Comorbidity Survey. Wait, people were saying that there were responses to what's this guy's name? What the fuck is this paper? Suicide risks associated with pregnancy outcomes, a national cross-sectional survey of American females 41 to 45 years of age. It's an interesting group, but okay. Oh, is this a... This is 2003, so this was a year later. This is a direct response paper, I believe. Abortion and its psychological implications are highly controversial. Politically charged issues, increasingly scientific research on psychological response to abortion is being cited as a basis for making policy decisions about access to abortion. In such a climate, it is essential to health providers and policymakers base their conclusions on reputable scientific research that is methodologically rigorous, conceptually sound, and free from ideological bias. In this issue, David Reardon and colleagues describe how they conducted a record linkage study of psychiatric admissions among a sample of low-income women who had received state funding for either an abortion or delivery in 1989. They report that subsequent psychiatric admission rates were higher for women who had an abortion than for women who delivered. Their conclusion implies there was the result of problems relating to aborting a pregnancy. This conclusion is misleading. It is a fundamental tenet of science that one cannot infer cause from a correlation between two variables. Consider, for example, the strong correlation that exists between the number of bars in a city and the number of churches in a city. How can we explain this finding? Some may conclude that religion drives people to drink. Others may conclude that drinking drives people to religion. The most likely explanation, however, is that the correlation is spurious, caused by a third unmeasured variable that is associated both with the number of churches and the number of bars in a city, such as city size. A similar analysis can be applied to the association reported here between abortion and psychiatric admissions. Although it is possible that abortion leads to psychiatric problems, it is just as plausible that the direction of causality is reversed, namely, that psychiatric problems cause women who become pregnant to feel less capable of raising a child and to terminate their pregnancy. Reardon and colleagues attempted to control for this by omitting from their analyses women who had been admitted for inpatient psychiatric care in the year before the target pregnancy As noted by the authors, however, they did not measure or control for psychiatric admissions before this year and were unable to control for other indicators of prior mental health that might predispose a woman to terminate a pregnancy rather than carry to term. Why not physical health? What? The most plausible explanation for the association observed by Reardon and colleagues is that it is spurious. It reflects unmeasured differences that exist before the target pregnancy between the women in the delivery and the abortion samples. The life circumstances of women who will continue a pregnancy differ from those of women who will abort a pregnancy in myriad and meaningful ways that have implications for mental health. Women who choose to deliver are more likely to have planned and wanted their pregnancies and feel emotionally and financially capable of raising a child. Women who seek abortion cite financial concerns, worries about their relationship, or the lack of relationship, and their lack of readiness to assume responsibility for a child. Contrast women who deliver. Women who terminate a pregnancy are less likely to be married or in an intimate relationship with their partner. Both those social factors are associated with poor mental health. Reardon and colleagues failed to control for these important social and psychological differences between groups in their analyses. Thus, the ways in which those women's lives differed, blah, blah, blah. It is also considered context in which women seek abortions when discussing the mental health implications of abortions. Women typically seek an abortion because they are faced with an unplanned and unwanted pregnancy. To compare the mental health of a woman who give birth, or mental health of women who give birth, typically of a planned unwanted pregnancy, those who have abortions, typically of an unintended unwanted pregnancy, as Reardon and colleagues did, is to compare apples to oranges. From a mental health or social policy perspective, it is more appropriate to compare women who abort an unwanted pregnancy with women who are denied or unable to obtain an abortion, and hence are forced to carry to term a pregnancy that is unwanted. Another appropriate comparison group would be women who deliver a child and give it up for adoption, by at least partly controlling for the wantedness of pregnancy. Such comparisons provide assurances that the women being compared are similar in the predicament they face and the risk factors for subsequent psychiatric illnesses. Researchers seeking to study women's psychological reaction to abortion face a number of methodological obstacles. A truly definitive study of the psychological effects of abortion is impossible, as such a study would involve randomly assigning women with unwanted pregnancies to continue or abort their pregnancies, a prospect that is clearly unethical. Thus, the best one can do is base conclusions on those findings that emerge consistently from the most rigorously designed research. The findings of Reardon and colleagues are inconsistent with a number of well-designed earlier studies. They compare the psychological politics and value. Okay. For the outcome of a first pregnancy, predict depression, suicidal ideation, right. This is from 2011. Somebody linked a big... Does the outcome of a... Wait, no, not that. Sorry. What is this? 20... I just see no date. 2013, sorry. Okay, Jesus. Fatal flaws in a recent meta-analysis on abortion and mental health. That's mine. It's the Giga counter to all shit studies. Similar to other reviews within the last 4 years, a thorough review by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, not psychiatrists, okay, psychiatrists, published in December 2011, found that compared to delivery of an unintended pregnancy, abortion does not increase women's risk of mental health problems. In contrast, a meta-analysis published in September 2011 concluded that abortion increases women's risk of mental health problems by 81% and that 10% of mental health problems are attributable to abortions. Like others, we strongly question the quality of this meta-analysis and its conclusions. Here we detail 7 errors of this meta-analysis and 3 significant shortcomings of the included studies because policy, practice, and the public have been misinformed. These errors and shortcomings render the meta-analysis conclusions invalid. Several recent reviews of studies on abortion. Oh, that's a good question, actually. Several recent reviews of studies on abortion and mental health have been published. All these have come to similar conclusions regarding the causal association between abortion and subsequent mental health, namely that in the aggregate, women who terminate unintended pregnancy are not at an increased risk of mental health problems compared to women who carry an unintended pregnancy to term. These conclusions are based on a thorough review of the literature and inclusion of studies that have very high design quality and are not biased towards finding abortion leads to mental health. Okay, several recent reviews of studies have been published. 1 through 4. Okay. Despite these independent reviews all having similar conclusions, one recent review by Coleman came to a different conclusion. A meta-analysis concluded that abortion increases women's risk of mental health problems by 81%, and that 10% of mental health problems are attributable to abortions. Remember, one of your leading indicators that some research is bullshit is if you come out and you claim in your research to have found something that is not only different from what a lot of other researchers are saying, but significantly different. 81% increase. That sounds like a big relative risk adjustment, but the methods, results, and conclusions of this meta-analysis have been seriously questioned by several researchers and scholars. 10 letters to the editor were highly critical of the methodology used, and with 2 calling for a retraction of this meta-analysis. In addition, the final version of a review by the Royal College of Psychiatrists stated that a number of methodological problems with the meta-analysis conducted in the Coleman Review have been identified, which brings into question both the results and conclusions, and a commentary published in January 2012, written by authors of the Royal College of Psychiatrists Review, concluded that the Coleman meta-analysis cannot be regarded as a formal systematic review. Like others, we strongly question the quality of this meta-analysis of 22 papers, just as the reliability, validity, and replicability of some of the studies in the meta-analysis have been questioned. While many have discussed the errors and shortcomings in separate critiques of the Coleman meta-analysis, none has presented a comprehensive summary of them in one paper. Below, we present a summary of the most serious and significant errors of this meta-analysis because policy, practice, and the public have been badly misinformed. We then briefly discussed significant shortcomings of various studies included in the meta-analysis. In addition, because of the RC Psych review was published around the same time, came to different conclusions than Coleman's meta-analysis. Where appropriate, we discuss how aspects of the Coleman meta-analysis and RC Psych review differed. We also present tables 1 and 2 to illustrate the errors of mental circumstances. Okay, Jesus. Okay. Let's make sure real quick. This guy's not like, or girl. She's not like the head of the Kill Babies organization or something, all right? Is a professor of ecological economics at the University of Lausanne. She studies the relationships between the use of resources and performances of societies. She's an author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, 6 to 7 report. Oh my God. Okay, we get it. We get it. Whatever. Jesus. Wait, is this the right person? Jesus. Daughter of Nobel laureate in physics Jack Steinberg, studied science at the Collège des Chercheurs in Switzerland, where she was awarded the Des Saussure Prize in 1993. Moved to the US for a graduate degree, working at Brown University on the cosmic microwave background. Earned her PhD studying ultra-cold atoms at MIT. Jesus. Oh no, supports the work of Greta Thunberg. Or Thunberg. Not good. Is this really the same researcher? She's the lead on this. Department of Psychiatry, University of Chicago, or I'm sorry, California. Julia R. Wait, I don't think this is the same person. Steinberger? Oh, this is Steinberger. We're looking for Steinberg. Ah, now we found you. Okay. Research is at the intersection of mental and reproductive health, and it's largely focused on family planning. One line of research is an important policy and clinical application examines whether abortion causes or increase the risk of mental health problems. Another line of research examines the role of mental health in unintended pregnancies. Okay, so this is her area of research. Okay. Okay, so we would just say that this is big review I did not copy paste the right thing, just kidding. Big 2013 review. You still want philosophy people? Not right now. Big 2013 review published Chapter 17 detailing the errors of prior studies, prior to associate abortion with negative mental health outcomes. Okay. Okay, that's good enough for that, I think. What the fuck? Okay, where am I? Abortion perils debated. Somebody linked this. This is so short. The study by David Reardon and Associates is seriously flawed. It presents misleading conclusions. The authors compared two groups of women as if the only differences between them was whether or not they had an abortion. However, many factors were unknown. For example, whether the women in the control group were in stable relationships or whether they had planned their pregnancies. The women in the case group had not had a psychiatric admission in the previous year, but the reasons for their abortions were unknown. These women may have been troubled before they got pregnant. Women who are mentally ill, under stress, and without social supports constitute the group most likely to need an abortion because they cannot cope with the pregnancy or having a child, but these women will also have the most difficulty coping with an abortion. The fact that the most common diagnosis for those admitted after their abortions was psychotic depression strongly suggests that some of these women had a previous history of mental illness. Reardon and Associates bolster their alarmist conclusions by quoting a select group of studies that have supposedly also found major negative consequences, ignoring the thorough reviews by both the APA and the Surgeon General of the United States, who found no evidence of harm. It is surprising that CMAJ would publish such poor quality research. Damn. Well, okay. I might look at one more study real quick before. Okay, so California Medicaid study examining 170. Yeah, she's very tricky with the way that she brings this up, by the way, which is very interesting. Because when somebody says the California Medicaid study, it almost sounds like a government was commissioned to take a look at the data, which is not at all the case, right? It was a super pro-abortion guy with a fake PhD, who, like, that's, yeah. She mentions this Turnaway study. Introduction to the Turnaway study. Is this the Turnaway study, or is this a paper talking about the Turnaway study? The Turnaway study is ANSIRHs. What is that? Advancing New Standards in Reproductive Health. Okay. There's a study to describe the mental health, physical health, and socioeconomic consequences of receiving an abortion compared to carrying an unwanted pregnancy to term. 2008 to 2010, we recruited women from 30 abortion facilities around the country. We interviewed nearly 1,000 women who sought abortions, some who received abortions because they presented for care under the gestational limit of the clinic, and some who were turned away and carried to term because they were past the facility's gestational limit. We interviewed participants by phone every 6 months over a period of 5 years. We conducted nearly 8,000 interviews of the course of the study. During surveys, women share this complex and diverse stories about the effect of their unintended pregnancies on their lives. The Turnaway Study is an effort to capture women's stories, understand the role of abortion and childbearing in their lives, and contribute scientific data to the ongoing public policy debate on the mental health and life course consequences of abortion and unwanted childbearing for women and families. The most common reasons for seeking an abortion are not being able to afford to have a child, the pregnancy coming at the wrong time in life, and the man involved not being a suitable partner/parent. Alcohol, tobacco, and drug use is an uncommon reason, but women who cite this reason do not have otherwise wanted pregnancies. Okay. Who seeks later abortion and is denied because they are beyond gestational limits. We estimate that even before most 20-week bans were implemented, more than 4,000 women per year were denied wanted abortions due to gestational limits. Women who seek later abortions are often slowed down by not realizing they were pregnant, followed by logistical barriers to getting a later procedure. Young women and women who have never had a child before are at higher risk of not recognizing pregnancy in the first trimester. Recruited women from 30 facilities over 3 years. Paper load describes strategies we use to increase the number of women who are approached and the participation rate. The following papers describe the counseling that occurs in abortion clinics. Shows that most women don't feel pressured and that they find counseling less helpful when it is state mandated. Many women choose to view their ultrasounds, and their emotional responses to viewing are not all negative, and some are even positive. Many women choose to view their ultrasounds, and their emotional responses to viewing are not all negative, some are positive. About half of women report seeing protesters at the clinics. Half, damn. The more contact, the more upsetting the protesters are, but protesters don't change how women feel about their abortions. There's a substantial burden women face trying to raise money to pay for an abortion. Many women who did not have access to public or private insurance coverage were delayed due to raising money for the abortion. The Turnaway Study examined the effects of receiving or being denied abortion on women's mental health, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and suicidal ideation, and well-being. We find no evidence that abortion causes negative mental health or well-being outcomes. However, we do find that being denied an abortion is associated with elevated levels of anxiety, stress, and lower self-esteem soon after abortion denial. Over time, these outcomes generally improve, so that by 6 months to 1 year post-abortion seeking, women who have an abortion and those denied one have similar levels of mental health and well-being. Perceived abortion stigma at the time of seeking an abortion is also associated with negative psychological outcomes years later. Wait, who cited the Turnaway Study? Oh, I think this was a... I think this might have just been like a fact check.
Hey.
Shut up! Jubilee, Leela Rose. I don't know if anybody actually mentioned it by name. Let's check.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so do you know the number one emotion women get after having an abortion is relief?
Are you referring to the Turnaway Study with that information?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the Turnaway Study has been heavily debunked because it's done by those that support abortion, and they said they were going to follow 1,000 women to see if there was an abortion regret after their abortions. Only 150 women would complete the study with them. The rest of them dropped off, some of them struggling with issues maybe connected to that abortion, but only 150 completed it. So that's a survey.
Who debunked this Turnaway research? Can somebody link me like a debunking? Or I guess I could maybe control F it. This order has been retracted, bruh. The Turnaway Study, a case of self-correction in science upended by political motivation and unvetted findings. Oh, it's Coleman again. This review begins with a detailed focus on the Turnaway study, which addresses associations among early abortion, later abortions, and abortions related to various. The Turnaway study was comprised of 516 women. However, an exact percentage of the population is not discernible due to missing information. Extrapolating from what is known reveals a likely low of 0.32% to a maximum of 3.18% of participants sampled from the available in the pool. Of what? Of every woman? What? Why do I care about this? Okay. Motivation for conducting the Turnaway study, methodological deficiencies, sampling issues and others, and bias are specifically addressed. Despite serious departures from accepted scientific practices, journals in psychology and medicine have published dozens of articles generated from the study's data. The high volume of one-sided publications has stifled dialogue on potential adverse psychological consequences of this common procedure. Following a critical analysis of the Turnaway study, an overview of the strongest studies on abortion and mental health is offered. This comprehensive literature, comprised of numerous large-scale studies from across the globe, has been largely overlooked by scientists and the public. While the Turnaway study dominates the media, information provided to women, and legal challenges involving abortion restrictions. The final section of this article, literature reviews by professional organizations are considered, demonstrating that the biased science characterizing the Turnaway study is aligned with a pervasive and systemic phenomenon wherein deriving reliable and valid results via careful selection, careful attention to methodology and scrutiny by the scientific community have been supplanted by politics. Oh no. I wonder why they retracted this. Following publication, undisclosed competing interests were brought to our attention, which undermined the objective editorial assessment of the article during the peer review process. Frontiers conducted a post-publication assessment of the article, including consulting with independent expertise, which concluded that the article does not meet the standards of publication of Frontiers in Psychology. This retraction was approved by the chief. Okay. The authors did not agree with this retraction, obviously. Wait, what? The Turnaway study explored response of women, including minors, who obtained or were denied abortions around the gestational limit of clinics throughout the United States. The authors also included women who had first trimester abortions for comparison purposes. More specifically, the authors recruited participants with three distinct profiles. One, women whose pregnancies were dated between 1 day and 3 weeks after clinic gestational limits and were therefore unable to secure an abortion. Two, women whose pregnancies were between 1 day to 2 weeks shy of the clinic gestational limit had an abortion. Most of the participants in the Turnaway group, 60% gave birth. 32% had abortions at another location or had a miscarriage or stillbirth. The investigators checked for eligibility and then relayed information. In January 2022, Kaiser Health News interviewed Turnaway study principal investigator Foster, reporting data from the Turnaway study resulted in the publication of more than 50 peer-reviewed studies. And the answer to nearly all the questions asked, said Foster, is that the women who got abortions fared better in respect to economic and health, including their mental health, compared with those who did not have abortions. In an article in the December 2021 issue of Scientific American, a sociology professor, Amanda Stevenson, was quoted as saying, "It's impossible to overstate how scholarly the design of the study is." Ooh. The purpose of this review is to step back from the far-reaching and laudatory comments in major media and popular press that have described the study as debunking most anti-abortion arguments, proving restricting abortion harms women, and as landmark to examine what can be gleaned from the study's inception to efforts to answer the question replete with political ramifications: does abortion place women at risk for mental health problems? Okay. Following a detailed analysis of the Turnaway study, an overview of the strongest studies available worldwide related to abortion and mental health is provided. This comprehensive literature has been largely ignored as the Turnaway study dominates the media, information provided to women, and legal challenges involving abortion restrictions. In the final section of this article, literature reviews by professional organizations are addressed to illustrate that the biased science characterizing the Turnaway study is aligned with a pervasive and systemic phenomenon wherein scientific principles have been held captive by a political agenda that has no room for vetting knowledge and skeptical scientists. The Turnaway study origins, basics, and methodological flaws. In 2016, Martin observed that Warren Buffett had provided a minimum of $80 million to the University of California, San Francisco Reproductive Health Institute, with the fund supporting researchers with outspoken political agendas. The research initiatives dates back at least to the early 2000s. It became more... Wow, okay. The analysis below of the sampling procedures and other methodological problems clearly demonstrates that the Turnaway study cannot yield reliable data, precluding generalizability to women seeking U.S. abortions. An affidavit of the Supreme Court. The Turnaway study investigators do not clearly articulate the sampling plan, the size of the population, or precisely how sites situated in different cities were chosen. Only very generalized information on these issues is described in the operating procedures manual. The cities are not identified. In one of the study's published articles, Biggs et al. Noted, from 2008 to 2010, we recruited women seeking abortions care at 30 facilities in 21 states throughout the USA. Facilities were identified using the National Abortion Federation membership directory and by referral. Sites were selected based on their gestational age limits to perform an abortion procedure, where each facility had the latest gestational limit and any facilities within 150 miles. Gestational age limits. From this description, there's no way of knowing if all the selected facilities engaged in recruitment during the first year and continued efforts for the full 3 years. Recruiting, okay. Facilities engaged in recruitment during the first year, okay. The editors and all 4 peer reviewers were part of an anti-abortion advocacy group and not disclosing. Is that really what happened? If so, based? A significant percentage of patients, abortion initiates feelings of regret, loss, and alienation from others. Oh no. What was our most recent one? Kim Port et al. Fuck, what is the... Am I retarded for not seeing that? Oh, Kim Port. This one? Misunderstanding abortion regret. Okay. The abstract of this: the debate about abortion regret rests on competing assumptions about women's attachment to pregnancy. Anti-abortion claimants argue women always attach to pregnancy, inevitably regretting abortion, while abortion rights supporters counter that women do not attach to pregnancies they choose to terminate, feeling relief instead. Neither assumption explains women's experience. Research shows that attachment is discursively produced. What does discursively mean? Means to move from one topic to another in a rambling or digressive way, or to proceed by reasoning and argument rather than intuition. Neither assumption explains women's experience. Research shows that attachment is discursively produced, so they reason their way to it. Using interview data from 21 women, this study moves past these political claims to empirically identify 3 sources of women's emotional difficulty around abortion: social disapproval, romantic relationship loss, and head versus heart conflict. Findings point to the importance of attention to women's lived experience in space for complex feelings around abortion. Interview data from 21 women. Okay. That doesn't necessarily make it bad, but... "21 women who had emotional difficulties related to abortion participated in semi-structured in-depth interviews in 2009. Of these, 14 women were recruited." Jesus, okay, these are... Very limited sample size things. Okay. Research can elucidate this. Wait, 21 women who had emotional difficulties related to an abortion participated in semi-structured, in-depth telephone interviews. Well, I mean, okay. I mean, then, well, they're literally choosing for women that are having negative emotional outcomes, right? For a significant percentage of patients, abortion initiates feelings of regret, loss, and alienation from others. I don't think these two would necessarily support that conclusion. These are super limited, and they're choosing for people that... okay, whatever. Why was this retracted? Stop. Close. Retracted anti-abortion paper contained undisclosed conflicts of interest. An anti-abortion paper retracted by a Frontiers journal the day after Christmas contained undisclosed conflicts of interest among its guest editors and peer reviewers, according to an analysis by digital science company Rapida. A technology company dedicated to supporting building trust in science today shared some of its findings, including a conceptual model demonstrating how independent peer review should look at what the conflicts of interest are in this case. The paper in question, published last year in Frontiers in Psychology, is The Turnaway Study, a case of self-correction in science upended by political motivation and unvetted findings. This paper sought to criticize the Turnaway Study, a landmark study describing the mental health, physical health, and socioeconomic consequences of receiving an abortion compared to carrying an unwanted pregnancy to term. This sounds like a study I should become familiar with. The Turnaway Study sounds like a pretty important landmark study for abortion stuffs. This paper sought to criticize the Turnaway Study, a landmark study. Okay, Coleman's paper was retracted by Frontiers on December 26, 2022. It's reported in Retraction Watch. PETA CEO and co-founder Dr. Leslie McIntosh says Coleman's article first came to the company's attention last year through algorithms that showed irregularities in the paper's trust markers, and then through social media. The alert we received indicated we should look closer at the trust markers within the article to ensure due diligence of scientific processes was followed. Dr. McIntosh says the peer review process is of clear interest in research conduct and integrity. Because Frontiers published the names of reviewers and their declared affiliations, this transparency allows researchers like us to review their affiliations in the context of the peer review process. Coleman's article was part of a research topic similar to a special issue, which was led by 3 guest editors. The article itself had 4 peer reviewers. However, while all 4 peer reviewers state different affiliations, Rapida has found that 3 of them are directly and 1 indirectly affiliated with the anti-abortion Charlotte Lozier Institute, which describes itself as the preeminent organization for science-based pro-life information and research. In addition, the editor charged with reviewing the article is also affiliated with CLI. Most of the associations were not disclosed. Oof, that's not good. This example highlights the potential for institutes, peer reviewers, or authors to translate aligned political interests into scientific influence. Okay, that's a good... Are there any other big debunks besides this one, or is this the one that she's referring to? I'm curious.
Survey of only 150 women would complete the study with them. The rest of them dropped off, some of them struggling with issues maybe connected to that abortion, but only 100...
Wait. Somebody said there's a reason why conflict of interest is a basis for desk rejection. You cannot trust that the data wasn't manufactured out of thin air to support claims. Maybe, however, conflict of interest will not necessarily get your study rejected. It's good for disclosing for people to know what's going on, right? So that they can look into, what your conflict of interest is. Not disclosing conflict of interest is a huge red flag, and my guess is that will generally get you completely kicked out, because now it looks like the conflict of interest is so intrusionary, that's not a real word, but it's intruding so much on your ability to reason independently, and it is, that your refusal to disclose that conflict of interest might be, or is intentionally hampering your ability to is intentionally hampering your ability to be nonpartisan. Sure, but there's a difference between a minor conflict of interest and something like here. I agree with that. Having 4 people that are associated with the anti-abortion thing doing a review on an article about abortion is probably not it's probably not what you want, right? ...2022 study in Frontier Psychology. by Priscilla Coleman was eventually retracted due to the 4 peer reviewers involved and the researcher herself not disclosing their affiliation with the Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is a pro-life information organization. Okay. This example highlights the potential for institutes, peer reviewers, or authors to translate as access to abortion is a political issue. As Coleman's article is distinctly anti-abortion, and as all of the editors and peer reviewers responsible for checking Coleman's article are members of organizations, institutions that are anti-abortion on moral terms, there appears to be non-independence among all these actors. Hence, there appears to be significant confirmation bias and conflict of interest within the scientific process in this case. Dr. McIntosh says the Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE, oh no, definition of systematic manipulation of the publication process appears to have been met. Whatever the quality of Coleman's article, political conflicts of interest have undermined the peer review process by causing the independent assessment criterion of peer review to fail, she says. The author, editors, and peer reviewers should have included reviewers outside of their politically aligned affiliations, which raised concerns regarding the peer review process being contaminated with potential bias. Dr. McIntosh says that, based on the multiple levels of conflict of interest in peer review, the paper should never have been included in the scholarly literature, and then it was retracted, I guess. I wonder if this lady, I feel like I'm seeing her name a lot, Coleman, is she also a big anti-abortion advocate? She's a retired professor of human development and family studies in the School of Family and Consumer Sciences at Bowling Green State University. Another one of these big abortion and mental health problems, okay. Yeah, I see that ASOS, but it's not necessarily bad if she's using good methodologies, right? Is this debate happening at a live event? Yeah, it's down at UCI. Her research was mostly met with poor reception from her professional colleagues, with at least one of her manuscripts was retracted. In a separate case, researchers were unable to reproduce Coleman's results on abortion and mental health, despite using the same data set, and have described her findings as illogically inconsistent, potentially substantially inflated by faulty methodology. The APA and other major medical bodies have concluded the evidence does not support a link between abortion and Ooh, Steinberg. This Julia Steinberg chick is on the other end of a lot of these too. Stop. Using the U.S. National Comorbidity Survey, Coleman, Coyle, Shuping, and Rue published an analysis indicating that compared to women who had never had an abortion, women who had reported an abortion were at an increased risk of several anxiety, mood, and substance use disorders. Here we show that these results are not replicable. That is, using the same data, sample, and codes as indicated by those authors, it is not possible to replicate the simple bivariate statistics testing the relationship of ever having had an abortion to each mental health disorder when no factors were controlled for in analyses. Furthermore, among women with prior pregnancies in the NCS, we investigated whether having 0, 1, or multiple abortions were associated with having mood, anxiety, or substance use disorder at the time of the interview. In doing this, we tested 2 competing frameworks, the abortionist trauma versus the common risk factors approach. Our results support the latter framework in the bivariate context when no other factors were included in models. Abortion history was not related to having a mood disorder, but it was related to having anxiety or substance use disorder when prior mental health... Okay. Wait, fuck. Table 2 and Coleman et al. View PDF. Why is it so hard for me to see this? Am I fucking retarded? No, just kidding. We got it. We're good. Whatever. Nope, never mind. We don't got it. Why are all their papers such dog shit? These are always like so like it's like, oh, here's our 6-page research paper drawing this massive causal relationship. Holy fuck. I'm not reading this whole thing. Does induced abortion carry the potential to adversely affect sexual well-being? The seemingly straightforward question is complicated by a number of characteristics, inherent variables of interest, as well as external factors surrounding investigative efforts. Oh, we see our Reardon guy here. She's citing her own research here. I've seen this Kugel name or whatever pop up a few times as well, but... So I'm guessing the researchers that went through this and checked it must have had access to the same data set. Whoops. Stop! I didn't mean to do that. Using the same data samples and codes indicated by those authors, it's not possible to replicate the simple bivariate statistics. Okay. Good one. Okay.
And 50 completed it. So that's a survey of only 150 women. And again, I think we need to look at women at large and their experiences, and there will...
The Turnaway study sounds like a compilation of like a ton of different research. Is she summarizing that entire project as just one study of 150? Or am I misunderstanding that? Or no, I guess they're just citing other research, I'm sorry, and this pamphlet here. So maybe that... This is just their citations to other things, I think. Okay. Let's see, and then the author of the Turnaway study did a response to that paper before it was retracted. Addressing the criticisms, our goal was not to recruit all people seeking abortions over the study period. We specifically recruited women just above and just below the gestational limit, rather than all women seeking abortion, to ensure unbiased estimates of the effects of abortion on women's lives by comparing the outcomes of similar groups of women who, almost at random, received or were denied their wanted abortion. We were able to isolate the effects of abortion on people's well-being. For a study to be generalizable, the characteristics of the sample need to reflect the target population of people seeking abortions, and any selection biases need to be minimized. Our sample closely reflects the characteristics of those seeking abortion nationally. We examined outcomes for women recruited from high versus low participation rate sites and did not find differences. We asked clinics to approach every woman who was denied an abortion due to being over the gestational limit. For the other two groups, for which eligibility was more common, clinics were permitted to select times to recruit so long as they approached every eligible person while they were doing recruitment. The flexibility around recruitment for the two abortion groups explains the lower approach rates for those who receive abortions. As we have previously reported, clinics were not deciding who to approach based on any characteristics of the abortion patient other than eligibility for one of the three studied groups. It is inappropriate to characterize the study sample size based solely on the number of people who complete the final interview. With longitudinal studies, there is inevitable loss to follow-up. Loss to follow-up is a concern when those lost are systematically different from those who remained in the study. This is true. And turn away, we have evidence that loss to follow-up was not different by baseline physical health, mental health, or economic well-being. This is good to know. The Turnaway study collected data for over 1,000 people. Some did not do the phone interviews and were included in the credit study and death record search. 956 completed at least one phone interview. We use all 7,851 interviews in our analyses, which allows us to show that there was not differential loss to follow-up based on attitude towards abortion or key outcomes. The mixed effects regression models we employ in our analyses account for missing observations, protecting against bias owing to loss to follow-up that is predictable from previously measured covariates. I did an incredibly in-depth abortion video. It could save you hours. Two-hour video. Maybe. We'll see. Although Coleman criticizes the Turnaway study's participation and attrition rates, these rates are well within the expected range for a 5-year study and similar to other prospective studies of this type. Our rate of attrition of about 5% from wave to wave represents excellent participant retention. Oh, wait, only 5%? Wait, how many did they have follow up to the very end then? Compared to other research in the field and as a study strength, Coleman draws attention to a small difference we found in who was lost at 3 years. Yet we have also reported that by 5 years, there was no longer a difference in retention by baseline emotions or any other related outcome, decision rightness, decision difficulty, or perceived abortion stigma. All our mental health measures were widely accepted and have been validated in the United States and elsewhere. The brief symptom inventory, patient health question. The criticism that we have lumped participants who have early and later abortions together is false. 516 of the initial 1,000. Okay. She's making it sound like it was only 180 or whatever. Okay, yeah. Those just under the limit who receive an abortion in the first trimester, but the underlying assumption of the critique that women who seek later abortions have different psychological responses than people who seek early abortions is not supported by the Turnaway study findings. When explicitly comparing reasons for abortion, emotional reactions, and decision rightness among people seeking near limit versus first trimester abortions, we find few differences. Instead, we find that people seeking abortion later in pregnancy do so primarily because they discovered they were pregnant later and because they experienced a series of logistical and financial barriers to getting an abortion. Interesting. Okay. The Turnaway study captures experiences of people who were seeking abortion services and therefore who would be affected by abortion bans. Any selection of subsets of people who never had a prior abortion or never go on to have another unwanted pregnancy would create biases that would result in the sample no longer reflecting all those who sought an abortion. To understand the effect of access to abortion on people's lives, there's no reason to include a sample who choose to carry unintended pregnancies to term. These people are not affected by the availability of abortion services. The most important contribution to the Turnaway study is the quasi-randomized design, that women were similar to each other before one group got an abortion and the other was denied, and based on credit reports, okay, listen. Okay, wait. Fuck. I don't know how many of you fucking pay attention to my shit, okay? Okay, hold on. Okay. All right. I'm just reading random shit. We're just going through random stuff, okay? Reading random shit, going through random stuff, okay? And we can kind of like develop a little bit of an understanding of like kind of what's going on here, right? So we see a couple of the big names that are popping up in terms of like the anti-abortion stuff, right? We can kind of see like where, this Coleman, we see that whatever this guy's name was, we understand kind of like the arguments they're using, right? Now, one of the huge complaints that I had before in that one study was that you might have very, very different women who are getting an abortion versus who are having a pregnancy, right? And one of the things that I've said before is that usually when researchers are looking at things, researchers are usually pretty clever. These are generally pretty smart people, are pretty clever at trying to find clever ways to disaggregate to like groups of people to measure the variable that we really want to measure, right? So for women that have a baby versus women that have an abortion, what we're really trying to measure is like, if you have the abortion, is that having a negative outcome on your health versus those that have the baby, right? But if we just look at two groups of people who have an abortion versus those who have a baby, well, there might be a bunch of other stuff that we're missing, right? So this Turnaway study is clever, and what it's looking at is, let's say that I have 100 women, let's say 50 gave birth and 50 had an abortion. Who's to say whether or not the aborted babies or the delivered babies are producing better or worse outcomes for the parents, right? Well, what if we take 100 women that all went into an abortion clinic and 50 of them were turned away because they were a little bit over the gestational limit, and then 50 of them were allowed to have abortions? Well, now we have a much more similar group of people, because initially all 100 were seeking abortions, and now we're in a much more, I think, like similar category of here than just including a bunch of random people, right? So this it's boring, and it doesn't always show up necessarily like in the abstract of studies or whatever, but sometimes when you go into like the methodology of some of the studies, that's where you actually get some of the more interesting materials. Like, oh, here's like a really simple confound that everybody would think of, and here's how the researchers like corrected for it. I understand now, I guess, why it's called the Turnaway studies, because this was the idea that they had to try to find a more similar group of women and then measure the outcomes to see if the abortions were actually having deleterious impacts on their mental health, right? The ways in which their lives diverge are therefore directly attributable to whether or not they got the abortion. We find large negative economic and health consequences for people who are denied wanted abortions, an experience that is going to be more common now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned and many states have banned abortion. Okay, that's cute. And then Turnaway study. Fuck, a fucking book on it. Who was the Diana Foster is the author of this book. Is she the lead researcher of the study? I should just wiki it. That's what I should be doing. It is Diana Foster. Okay. Fuck. What was the response that I was just reading? I closed it. I fucked up. Control T. Oh, it was this. Sorry. Okay. Got it. It's involved in a response to Coleman's review. Coleman's review was retracted. Jesus. Okay. Okay, cute. All right.